All right, so here's another another topic that I've been kind of like, I guess, like jumping around in a sense throughout my life, but I guess at the same time, for a lot of my life, I was sort of like hard set on one of the sides, and it is the topic of truth. That I think through like a good chunk of my life, I was very focused on knowing the truth and knowing what is the absolute reality and how are things, just the absolute way in which things really are. And something about this was kind of off because I remember noticing pretty early on that um, we rely a lot on science to define what it is that is real. But as I'm kind of like thinking about that this was when I was in school. As I'm thinking about that, I'm also learning about all these things that we used to consider scientific, but now we don't even talk about. All these ideas that were accepted by science, and now they are. It's like they don't exist anymore, and that combined with the fact that I also studied in a kind of like a religious in a Catholic school, so I also studied about how it seemed like once upon a time the people who were deciding what truth was, the people who were determining what reality was, were that when we wanted to know about something, the people we would turn to would be the priests, because maybe they had some knowledge that we didn't have. They had some connection to God that we didn't have. Whatever it was, we relied on priests to determine what it was that our truth was. And at some point, we then demoted priests out of that position, out of that responsibility, and then we promoted scientists into that position or that responsibility. But we forgot a key part of why that responsibility wasn't or didn't seem to be working for us. And it was that whether or not someone is a priest or if they're a scientist or whatever it is they are still human. And so the way in which they see the world is not entirely the way in which the world is. That even if you think about your senses, by definition, your senses are both telling you the truth and also lying to you. That even if you think you can see the world clearly, like through your eyes, that if you're looking at a painting, that you can see every detail and all the colors and all these things, that you can truly see the painting. In the same way that you can see all these details, there are so many other details and so many other waveforms and colors and pieces of that painting that your eyes are not showing you. Or maybe your eyes are showing them to you, but somehow you're filtering them out. And this is really the case with all our senses. And it is also the case with the way in which we attempt to read the world through the sense of logic. That we're grabbing all this input and that we're grabbing all this insight with our more like physical senses, with our like hearing and with our touch and with our sight. And then from that information, we're drawing conclusions. But the source of that information is incomplete. And so it then begs the question of, can we truly and really understand this world from our kind of like limited personal understanding of what is actually going on, from our limited point of view? And this is where, like, I feel like the idea sort of starts to crumble for me, that there's one group in particular, or one section of people, or one group of special individuals that somehow know what the truth is. That it seems to me that the truth is very variable. That the truth, at least the truth that we have experienced as human beings, is very moldable. That there might just be an absolute truth out there, but I don't think we're in a position in which we could recognize it if it stood in front of us. That it doesn't seem like there is much in this world that we can say, hey, you know what? I am absolutely 100% certain that this is the absolute truth of this thing, and that it will never be challenged. That at no point science will kind of like comb through it again and then be like, oh, this is not actually how it works. That at no point, like, no belief will be able to challenge it, because it is the absolute and utmost truth. That everything that we believe has a space to be profoundly challenged, to be really put into question. And so if everything that we know is sort of like in that space in which it almost feels like we can't really know what the truth is, or maybe like a better way of saying it is that we cannot absolutely and certainly tell the difference between the line, or tell the difference between the space in which truth is absolute and then where it changes into personal truth, where it changes into the truth that comes from our limited perception of maybe that absolute truth. That since we don't know where that line is, since we don't know where that division is, then how can we truly define it? And I think one of the ways in which this has become especially troublesome in some of my experiences is that when you do certain types of meditations, or maybe when you just do dream work, or when you just like write your dreams down, like even simple stuff like dreams, if you go and you have a incredibly powerful dream, and in that dream something happens that you know that if you take action on it, it's gonna profoundly change your life in a way that you really desire it to change, that it's really gonna move your life in a positive way, you might be inclined to think, well, you know what? Yeah, but it was just my mind making that up. You know, it wasn't really God or an angel that came to me in that dream. It was just my subconscious. It was just my brain making it. You know, there's all these things that we say to ourselves, but it seems like a better question, as opposed to is this true or not, would be, is this useful to me or not? And that is something that I learned from Tom Campbell. And I think the moment that I remember him saying it, like, it really shifted the way in which I approached the world, because suddenly you remove the pressure of the world, of the pressure on the world and on yourself of always making sure that you need to be right, and more so focusing on what it is that is useful to you, what it is that is of value to you. Because if you then go and have a dream and have this really profound experience, and hey, you know what, maybe I should act on this, maybe I should move forward on this, because it seems like this will take me somewhere where I actually want to be. This will take my life in a direction that I actually want my life to go to, as opposed to if you sit down there and you're like, oh, is this true or not? How would you ever know? And even if it wasn't true, even if your brain made it up, if you feel like it's going to take you somewhere of use to where you want to take your life, and where you want your life to go, and the things that you want to be doing, then why the hell not take it? Why do we need absolute answers? Why do we need the absolute best way in which something is going to go? Why do we need to know the absolute truth of things? That it seems like in this pursuit of the absolute truth, what we're in many ways doing is we are accepting the truth that we think is true, and then shunning the other ones, or other people's truths, away along with those people that we are using truth, or the almost like the excuse of truth, as a method of separation between people that agree with you and people that don't, as opposed to using it for the reverse, as opposed to, hey, maybe you believe that things are a certain way, but then it turns out that your neighbor believes the opposite. Well, there's some usefulness to their belief. And maybe the usefulness is that it maybe challenges yours, and now your new belief is a combination of yours plus theirs. Or maybe it is a reasoning to go in and explore your beliefs even further, or their beliefs even further, and understand, where's this person's coming from, what of value is there for me in that, and where it is that my beliefs come from. What of value do I really have in them? Because oftentimes we take in things that we don't question as truth, but we know that we're certain that they're true, but we don't really ever come back and question them. And I think oftentimes there's a lot of power in going back through those things and challenging them and evolving them and figuring out, hey, maybe this thing is absolutely true. Maybe all the scientists of the world are convinced that this is how it absolutely is. But is it helpful for me? Is it helpful for me to be convinced that this is how it is? And if it's not, then maybe you don't need it. Maybe it's not useful for you. That at the end of the day, whatever it is that you are absolutely certain that is absolutely true, whatever it is that you think is so important that it cannot not be true, there's someone in the world who lives in a situation that is so absolutely different from yours that thing that seems absolutely true to you does not even register to them. It's not something that they will even ever consider across their lives. It's not something that will ever even come across their paths or their journeys. That there is so many things that we think are extremely important that when we look at it through the eyes of other people, we realize that they are not as critical, that they do not need to define who it is that we can have a relationship with, or be friends with, or that we can connect with, or that we can learn with or from. And so, again, whenever something comes up that puts into question where it is that you stand, ponder on that. Ponder on the idea of whether, instead of whether or not this is true or not, whether or not this person is telling me the truth or not, whether or not this experience is true or not. Is this experience helpful for me? And if it is, then you know what to do. And if it isn't, then you also know what to do.